Whether you're in your car or walking the street, research suggests some intersections in the state line are far more dangerous than others. Recently, Rockford leaders got a closer look at a new safety action plan proposed by Region 1 Planning Council. WYFR's Miriam Niesmeyer spoke with city leaders on their efforts to make sure streets are safer for all residents.
From intersections to crosswalks, one Rockford group takes a hard look at where crashes happen most and pushes for a safety action plan it says will make streets safer for everyone. Cars, cyclists, and pedestrians crowd Rockford streets every day, making some intersections and stretches of roads deadly. Rockford leaders want to put a stop to the climbing crash rates through a program called Safe Streets and Roads for All.
During the 6-year analysis period from 2017 through 2022, there were a total of 457 severe outcome crashes. 93 of those crashes were fatal.
Region 1 Planning Council analyzed that data and tracked the areas with the highest rates of vehicle crashes. The stretch from Kishwaukee Street to Harrison Avenue had 8 severe crashes over 6 years, resulting in a crash rate of nearly 76 severe crashes per 100 million miles traveled.
There's a lack of crossings at designated crosswalks. There's a lot of crossings at mid-blocks or at intersections that perhaps don't have crosswalks.
Roads like 11th Street, North Riverside, Alpine Road are just a few of the most dangerous streets in Winnebago County, according to the analysts.
The busier traveled roads, the roads that tend to have more cars and more pedestrians tend to have more vehicle accidents, more pedestrian accidents.
Jaywalking is a major risk. About a third of fatal crashes involve pedestrians.
Create more crosswalks, or if there are crosswalks there, try to make them more visible to the drivers that are out there.
The city plans to achieve a 50% reduction of traffic fatalities by the year 2050 and increase awareness of road safety.
Thank you, Miriam. The Safety Action Plan was made possible through a federal grant. It's still in phase 1 and the complete plan is not finalized yet. It will be open for public feedback until August 23rd. You're encouraged to share your feedback on Engage R1's website.